This episode of Obscure Chatter is brought to you by Cruffins. They aren't croissants, nor are they muffins. They taste like churros, but we're calling them Cruffins. Cruffins. And now, on to the episode. Welcome to another episode of Obscure Chatter. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome back. I'm your host, Terri Doty, and I don't know where to begin. Happy anniversary. If you've been listening to Obscure Chatter since the beginning, you might know that this is in June of 2019, we released our first official episode of Obscure Chatter, and it's been quite a ride. You know, in 5 years, nothing's happened through Obscure Chatter or globally that we really need to touch on. Nothing at all. No. So if you are noticing a vocal or room difference in the sound file, we are once again, this is for older listeners of Obscure Chatter, we are once again in the living room of the Dotyhoff Casa. This, or also known as the Dotyhoff Sectional, because I'm in my living room on my sectional watching something interesting. You may or may not know what it is. You probably don't, because I'm so mysterious. But we don't beep anymore. Don't worry. Again, that's a reference for those that have been listening for a while. It's kind of insane how ridiculously hot it is right now. I do love this, like, blasé. Like, I complained about the weather this morning on Twitter. I kind of like post universally through Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky. Like, Blue Sky is really for my people that fully left Twitter, also known as X. And then Threads is hit or miss, but the ones that I'm most active on are still Twitter and Instagram, and both have their weird hellscapeness. I'm also on TikTok, but mostly because of content and stuff. I actually have actively tried not to do a lot of talking on there because, you know, everything's kind of like a sea witch right now, trying to steal my fucking voice. I don't. How about leave me alone? Even Ariel signed a fucking contract. I didn't. Quit being a dick, every AI ever. So I had posted on Twitter that, you know, like a little screen grab of the meteorologist local to me kind of showing the forecast for the next week or so. And someone's like, well, yeah, that's normal. I'm like, it's not though. It's not though, Brenda. Her name's not Brenda. It's very emphatically atypical. It's weird. It's weird right now. And it's only going to get hotter. But rather than us talk about the weather, you know, forever, let's focus on our anniversary. You know, I'm just so glad that we've been together for so long. It's kind of crazy that we have been going for about 5 years. And like, I was kind of doing these breaks that we used to do with that anime show, if you're familiar with my previous podcasting work, where we kind of like played it fast and loose with taking like November and December off and coming back in January. And I was kind of doing the same thing. And I think that was when I was still getting my footing as far as what I thought Obscure Chatter was going to be. And, you know, the initial idea was doing this kind of audio commentary setup that I think worked to some degree. And then there are some parts listening back, I'm like, oh God. But I mean, that's with anything. Time is fickle. It's a fickle pickle. It's a very fickle pickle. You might have seen, if you do follow me on social medias, which is always at Tdotally, TeeDotally, Tdotally. Think Ned Flanders if he was just, you know, saying hi to me as a neighbor. Tdotally. But someone had kind of let me know that Obscure Chatter, no, not Obscure Chatter, that anime show, they couldn't get access to it. So I checked it out. And what initially happened with that anime show was the first 3 episodes were done through an actual radio time slot that we had, me and J. Michael Tatum. And then we immediately hated it. We were like, everybody else that was doing a show at the same time, we had like a wrestling show that was near us. It was so ridiculously loud and just, it was basically office spaces that weren't sound treated at all. And I got really cunty, which I love that word. I apologize if it shocks you at all, but I think the word is beautiful. Charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. Cunty. I don't know what the Y would stand for in this, but anyways, like I got a little snooty with, unintentionally snooty, just kind of like, hey, don't talk to me like I'm a novice. Like when I do have experience in sound design and recording, kind of explaining like, hey, can you talk to other people about like the loudness levels? Or are you going to do something to sound dampen, anything like that? And it was very much like well, nobody else is complaining. Like, I really hate that logic. I don't know about you guys. But I'm guessing I do a little bit in that whenever you say something, as a people pleaser, especially, where you're like, hey, this kind of bothers me. I just wanted to kind of have that on the record and someone to be like, wow, well, it's probably you because nobody else is complaining. Like, well, see, the thing is just, I'm just letting you know, but this immediate switch to combativeness, I'm like, all right, can't do that. But we decided we wanted to keep going and immediately got Steven, my partner in crime and life, involved. And it was like, oh, but we didn't know how to host. So the guys that we later will now later know as the One Piece podcast guys, at the time they were referring to themselves as the unofficial One Piece podcast guys. They, offered to host the shows for us, but in either 2021 or 2022, we wanted to get that off of their plate. It was just something that they shouldn't have had to keep up with after we ended the show in 2014. So Steven and I took ownership of that. As far as like that anime show aftercare, all that's done through Steven and myself. Tatum was mostly just a host. He was very much involved with like a lot of ideas and stuff, but as far as like upkeep, website, getting episodes out, all of that was done under me and Steven's supervision. So when people, Tatum's like, what do they mean? Like some people would ask Tatum stuff. He's like, I don't know, ask them. But he's still a creator of the show because it stemmed from us just annoying the shit out of people at parties and stuff and being like, wow, you guys should maybe get some of this out on a show so we don't have to deal with this. Little did they know. It just made us more talkative, I think. But so I checked it out and the domain was down for thatanimashow.com, and which means if the domain is down, the RSS feed is down. So anywhere that was hosting it was just missing. I don't really have an answer as to why that is, but it was clearly something, clearly the fault of Steven and me probably just completely forgetting about it because like I'd said, it's just, we stopped doing the show in 2014. So just kind of checking in here and there. We even offered to like sell our domain at one point, but nobody took us up on it. And now it's like, well, I don't know. The second I mentioned it was down, and that we're looking into it, few people are like, oh my God, please get it back up. I listen to it every now and again. And when the show was going, Tatum and I, and Steven to an extent, got a lot of love for the show. Like there was a point at Anime Fest, I signed this guy's iPod, which tells you that this was a while ago. I still have my iPod, but God forbid it holds a charge for more than 5 minutes. But he, he had informed me. I was like, I don't want to, ruin your thing. I'm sure you guys are tired of this story, but I'm just like for reference. He was serving time, No, he wasn't in prison. Otherwise that him having an iPod with him would have been a lot more impressive. Still impressive, but, he was, overseas serving, not serving time. God, I hope he's not listening to this, or if he is, he's like, no. But he let me know during an autograph thing that he wanted me to sign it because it kind of helped him through some pretty dark times. And there were people that made discs of our show, which the asshole in me wants to be like, you're all right, this is just for you, right? You're not pirating it. I've been informed by some people that it's definitely up places that aren't tied to Tatum, myself, or Steven at all. And that kind of sucks because we literally never made any money from the show at all. Sometimes we would be brought to cons to do like a live show or here and there, or Tatum and I would go to a thing and they wouldn't tell us till we were there. Like, yeah, we would like you to do that anime show thing. And we got kind of like really territorial about it. It's like, well, you didn't invite Steven. Like, there is no that anime show without Steven. Like, he's our engineer. He's, also one of our producers. He's like very responsible for a lot of stuff that people love about the show, even just the vibe. The show didn't really come together until we took it away from Fishbowl Radio Network and had it become our own. But yeah, so we can't, for some reason, we can't even log into our old website right now. And maybe it's laziness. I don't know. But for me, I can't figure it out immediately. So, this is going to go ahead and be the announcement on that. I was thinking maybe I'd do it at the end of the show, but no, let's make it the beginning of the show. Why not? Because we're here. Let's be like, oh, and more on that later. Like, I could do that, but here we are. What Steven and I decided to do is it's just easier for us to keep track of, and also probably cheaper. I say probably, it would be, because I would have to pay for another domain again, and it's a pain in the ass to keep up with. So what we're doing is, starting the first Thursday of July, we are going to start re-releasing that anime show episodes. There are 61 total. We're going to start re-releasing them through Obscure Chatter. Under the episode title, like the normal Obscure Chatter episodes will still be like we're on episode 49 right now. And, I don't know the title because, I pick the trope. I am still watching something from the show. I pick the trope from what I'm watching, and I don't pick that, trope until after the episode and think what out of all the tropes tied to what I'm watching, which trope fits kind of the idea of what I did before, or what I did throughout the episode. That's how the episodes are named. But that anime show will be under TAS Rewind. And the TAS Rewind episode 1 will be up through this. You won't have to subscribe to another podcast or anything like that. I made sure to tell Tatum about it, so he's been kind of updated on it. And we're also going to release, this is through multiple requests, we're going to release the episodes on YouTube as well, one at a time. This might not be as quick as you guys want, but what I'm doing is we luckily have a thorough archive of every episode. Even an episode that we fully took down many, many years ago. There are actually 62 episodes total, but only 61 that we're releasing, and I want you to just chew on that if you want. But it was a long time ago, and nobody ever was like, "Hey, where's this episode?" So the numbers might not correlate, or exactly, but we'll let you know who the guest in that episode was, if there was a guest, and we're still also releasing the live episodes, but from episode to episode, because it's been so long, I haven't listened to these episodes in a decade. And just this week, I've listened to the first five episodes, just to kind of see if I have to note anything, and also trying to note, like, hey, so time's a thing. Nothing like risque or anything, but there are, events that have long since passed, that it's like, oh, well, I hope that helps absolutely nobody that we're talking about this play that's about to come out 14 years ago, or talking about people that, we're not close to anymore, talking about people that we don't respect anymore. Again, look it up, whatever. But, just kind of making notes and noting that, hey, time's a thing. But listening to a few, it's like, wow, okay, the first few episodes, I'm like 25. That was, oh God, I'm like groaning at some of the stuff I'm saying, or the way, like being incredibly like harsh about like media, certain medias and all that. And I hadn't really gotten my footing as a voice actor yet, all this stuff. It's very interesting, but then I found myself getting caught up in it, because there are friends of mine that only in the past couple of years have listened to the show. And then there are friends that I've made because of the show that are like, whoa, you're listening to them again. Holy shit. But yeah, so through Obscure Chatter is, I guess, sponsoring in a way That Anime Show. And so under the YouTube channel, which is That Anime Show Podcast, there will be an episode released weekly, and through this RSS feed, there will be an episode released weekly. And that way, it's not just a huge clump of episodes released at a time. And it also gives me a chance to listen to all of these, because I've caught a lot of funky sound bits, especially in the first 3 episodes that Steven didn't engineer. And then just sound dampening some stuff. I don't even know if that's the right word, or finding these weird like gaps of like nothing, trying to cut down on some fuzz, like stuff that we probably should have cut forever ago, but it's learning as you go. And, here we are, some 14 years later, still talking about That Anime Show. All right, enough about That Anime Show, but look forward to it. But enough about That Anime Show. Let's talk about our anniversary. Terri, what about our anniversary? You're out here talking about the person that you were seeing before me. That's the voice of Obscure Chatter, I guess. Yeah, if this were a physical manifestation of any kind of thing, it's when it's a birthday or anything like that. Steven and I like to wake each other up by being like, it's your birthday, or like, happy anniversary. We did the stupid, like, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy, 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 happy anniversary. It's as annoying as you might think in person, but somehow more annoying. But yeah, it's kind of crazy 5 years later to be like, just looking at how much we've done, how many episodes. Sometimes it's like, wow, again, like kind of mentioning That Anime Show. It's like, we did 62 minus, 61 available soon, episodes of this frickin' show. Like, how did we do so many? And it's like, oh my God, we used to do this weekly. I used to podcast weekly, and there are people that do it weekly or even bi-weekly. I don't know how you guys do it. I don't know how fellow podcasters do it at all, because doing it once a month, like when I was working at that advertising place, it's kind of insane that, we were able to just get so much like done. There was a point that I was considering stopping doing obscure chatter because I was so busy, having my soul slowly sucked out of my body by a corporate gig. But I'm glad that I didn't. I'm glad that I don't have to be like, oh, hey guys, I'm back again. Like, I'm glad we found a way to continue to do it. And, if you guys are into the the YouTubeification of obscure chatter, we are toying with having that be available on YouTube as well. Remember, for those first few episodes, we did like the beep thing, which looking back, I'm like, my heart was in the right place. The idea machine was running and I really thought I was doing something clever. I think for the most part, it wasn't too distracting, but then there were a couple of guests that took that as a challenge and made Steven's life complete hell. Listening to like one episode in particular, it's like, oh, it's nice to have that kind of encapsulated because I kind of stopped being friends with like that person. And, it's nice to hear us like be so happy and remember the friendship that we had and all that. Like it's wild to kind of hear that. But that's the thing, even with that anime show, which I'm never going to stop bringing up, is it's not that Tatum and I aren't friends anymore. It's just we did that anime show when we saw each other like every couple of days. We lived close to each other. He and I just personally went through a bunch of stuff together during that time period. And we were both working, for the same place. And now we're both full freelance, and work for a plethora of people. And now he's in California. I'm still in Texas. I enjoy being in Texas more or less. I mean, you could look at how much Texas loves literally any of their citizens right now and kind of understand why I'm saying that with such disdain and dead eyes. But yeah, and it's just kind of crazy to be like, oh my God, like, listen to us now, like listen to us then, and just kind of be like, wow. I hear in that anime show episodes versus obscure chatter episodes, I hear a confidence behind the microphone now that I don't know, because I haven't worked my way through the entire set of episodes. I don't know if I ever got to throughout the span of that anime show. It's kind of crazy. To just hear that, like, whoa, I hadn't even, really started like going to like classes for VO. I really thought I was going to be like a full-time director. I don't know if I'd even really fully, put together that I wanted to write a book, and, just all that stuff is so kind of crazy to be looking at all this time. But now 5 years later into obscure chatter, it's, for those that may or may not recall, I've mentioned this before, but I'm talking about the June episode, which is the premiere of Obscure Chatter. It's not the first episode of Obscure Chatter. It's the redo of the first episode. The first episode was actually done in April, and then I had pretty intense personal shit happen to me, which I have talked about, but I really don't want to get too in depth if you're not familiar with it. And Stephen and I listened back to the episode, and we couldn't stomach the idea of what had happened to us previously, kind of tainting this new venture. So we redid it, like almost, I think, we deleted it. I couldn't even play it again if I wanted to. But yeah, I remember being in LA visiting some friends and premiering the first episode, and friends kind of reaching out and being like, hey, welcome back to the podcast game. And I while I was there, I think it was either the second or third, no, like the third episode, I recorded my friend in LA while I was there, Steve Yurko, who is the creator of the obscure chatter chatterbox named Jimothy. he was very patient with me. I was like, I'm thinking of like chattering teeth and some kind of film thing. And what he did was pretty close to the finished product, like with that little bit of information. But then I just kind of went, I want him to have chicken feet. And he didn't even bat an eye. He was just like, got it. Cool. And then that's immediately what it was. I don't know if I'd ever update Jimothy, at all, but he's very special. I would love to somehow get like a physical Jimothy going, or maybe like a Jimothy pin or something. But yeah, and so, we had guests for a little bit, and then 2020 happened, and trying to figure out the remote aspect. I love talking to people in person, and I'm not saying that virtual meetings and virtual talks are impossible, because obviously we found a way to do it, but the timing was just off. I think during Erica Lindbeck's show, the call kept dropping. And there was shortly after that, I'm like, I have to find a way to be comfortable doing it myself, or I have to quit doing the show. And the main thing that I took away was remembering why I wanted to do radio in college at all. And that was, I wanted to do a talk show. I wanted to have people vibe with pick up what I was putting down. You dig? And so the idea basically switched from being, like talking about like guests talking about stuff, because it was still very similar to that anime show, and that I was talking to my friends, most of which did anime. And I like that we talked about things that were still not anime related, but what became obvious to me is that just wasn't going to work, and I still didn't want to run the risk. I'm still very, very, very careful about when I go out, where I go out, and I mask when I know I'm not going to be able to distance myself from people, and always have a mask handy. For some reason, that's so controversial to people, but I don't understand why at all. But it became like thinking about like the Frazier relationship. With Stephen and I were oddly kind of like geeking about Cheers one day, and it's the Roz and the Kramer relationship, where as much as Kramer is talking to his listeners and talking to himself, he's talking to Roz too. So that's something where Stephen and I have considered, like, well, I feel like I'm kind of wasting this dude's off time. He's got a much more stressful, much more, strict timeline job, and the weekend is the weekend for him, or nights, all that. I don't want to take up too much of his personal time. But we tried it once where I recorded myself, and it was obvious that I was talking to myself, where I'm always talking to you guys, but I'm also talking to Steven too. I think that's very important. So as we go on, I think you'll know, like, if Steven, while we're still doing the show, if Steven were to go, I don't think I would ever do even attempt another Obscure Chatter. It just wouldn't, as much as like he's been in one episode of Obscure Chatter. He is not heard aside from that, but Steven is just as much Obscure Chatter as I am. So if he were to go while we're still doing this, yeah, nothing. It would just end. I wouldn't do like hey, let's do a goodbye or whatever. I say that, who knows? Maybe it would be like this giant thing where like the whole goal is to think that Ghost Steven is somewhere just laughing his ass off as I'm like, just like, fuck you, man. Like, you leave me here with all these assholes. Why? Who knows? But, yeah. So 5 years, happy 5 years, everybody. And who knows? I was like, to another 5 years, but I'm like, who the hell knows? And, let's see, let's get some water going. We're having the AC go the whole time that we're recording, because I've been auditioning and recording a lot it's so funny. The second it gets hot, it's like, hey, da 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 da, getting that hot. I was going to say hot box. Oh, but there is a vent in my double-walled whisper room, but that vent is so loud when recording that you have to basically, in post, take the sound out, which a lot of, clients are like, hey, yo, give us raw files, or they want to hear your room. So you can't do that and keep the AC on a good chunk of the time. So what basically happens for me, and I could probably do a booth update, but I just don't want to do any updates that I don't really have to. And you could argue that I do, but I just don't. I just open the door between takes, because if it's a long running thing, like I did a video game in there not too long ago, and I also had a client on the line and a director and a writer and an engineer. And my hair was straight at the beginning of the session because I had just gotten my hair done. And by the end of it, it was so curly, so humid. And I'd gone through like 2 of my Stanleys, as I have multiple Stanleys. And it's not like, I don't give a fuck if you like Stanley or not. Get a Stornley. I don't care. But they wanted to like keep chatting with me afterward. I'm like, excuse me. And I feel like they could hear the heat leave the booth because I opened up the booth and just went, but a client was just like, yeah, air that room out. Like, yeah, man. So to really give like vibe with you guys and not be dying, it was just, hey, so if we're going to keep doing obscure chatter during the summer, we have to consider, maybe hearing the AC, maybe hearing more pops, because we use a different mic when we're in here, and I am still watching something, so it's not about looking at multiple computer screens, because I have a 2-monitor setup in my booth and a little keyboard stand, all that. And in here, it's like mic stand and my water, and I'm just watching my normal television. It's phenomenal. So you guys were lovely enough to ask me some questions. Also, it's like you're always curious about like the music I'm listening to, what I'm watching. So as far as music goes, I have done a very small CD run. I will say, like, as far as like thrifting, because I always lately, past few months, I've been trying to collect more physical media, and I feel like everybody else too, because streaming is one thing, but I think we've learned our lesson. If you really love something, try to physically buy it. There are shows that I'm in that I still physically buy, because I can point somebody to a website, but there are things that I'm in that they go away, or the rights to the dub go away. Think about that. Buy. Or just, put it on a list and hope that, it stays streaming or stays affordable streaming. Who knows? It's just all so bad. So I stream music, definitely, but physically buying music is also fun. Trying to limit streaming while driving and all that, because isn't it always the way, like, hey, it's a great, song or whatever. And it's like, hey, here's a dead spot, and you're not going to be able to listen to jack squat. So I've just been buying CDs. Like Steven got, previously I had mentioned, Steven got me the Queen of the Damned soundtrack, which had before, and I just don't know what happened to it. It's always the way with things you love. Like those will go away and be like, oh, cool, but I still have All of the Police. Cool. Rad. For the 3 songs that I listened to. I have the Police because I was learning how to play the bass, and I listened to a lot of the Police when I when I was with my bass teacher. But yeah, we got it's this place called The Freak in Bedford, and it's right across, like the doors are right there, parallel to each other, by Horror Freak, which I know I've mentioned before. That's also in Bedford. And the Freak has great music, like great band shirts, great CDs, a lot of great like random tchotchkes, funky stuff. Check it out. But found Guns N' Roses. That's always fun. And Eurythmics, got some Eurythmics, got some Tears for Fears. I don't know if you guys have picked up on this, but I'm a huge like new wave kid. I say kid because I wore like the most new wave stuff. Apparently, like a teacher, my economics teacher in high school explained. He's like, yeah, if you'd grown up with me, we would have called you new wave. I listened to everything, but I was like, what is this new wave? Eurythmics, Tears for Fears, and the big one is another gift from Stephen for our anniversary, because our 15-year wedding anniversary was also this month. We didn't really get each other anything, but we've been doing this thing where we've been getting different stocking stuffers like every month and just saving up for the little things that would never be like a big gift, but we each wanted to give each other something. So I gave him this enamel pin that says, I am your density. If you get the reference, congratulations. And he gave me the Sucker Punch soundtrack, which, talking about things not being available, this version of Bjork's Army of Me is not available on streaming, at least that I found anywhere. You can only get it, and Sucker Punch was kind of hard to find, so I just stopped looking for it. And this is another piece of music that he found for me. It was wonderful, wonderful. As far as books, I've been rereading a lot of Dr. Jennifer Gunter's stuff with the state of the medical system. It's, it's always fun to kind of just be like, to see a doctor be like, you're not crazy. It is fucked. And as I get older, it's like, hey, so do they just not care about women after we stop menstruating? It's like, oh, and the doctor's like, actually, they don't really care about you when you are menstruating, but here's a book called Blood, The Science and Medicine and Mythology of Menstruation. I'm like, cool. So read about that. Very rarely do I read nonfiction, but when I do, it's gotta be interesting. And I like Jennifer's writing style. She's written the Vagina Bible, and I forget what other book that I think was directly about menopause. I forget what she called it, but that was a fascinating read. Just about like the mythology, and just it got me into wanting to read about the history of so many different things. We do not have the time for me to really jump into that. And then for those that may recall, I read smut and dark romance, all that stuff. But I don't know if this is considered dark romance, but it's I've read all the 5 available books of the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy, with the 6th book being out, I think, in August. And it's a play on the Midas mythology with, a shadow daddy, which shadow daddy, look it up. Be careful how you look it up, or a rot daddy. And that's all I'm going to say on that. But another one that it feels like I should have read before, but I didn't. But I watched the movie as a kid, and for the life of me, I'm like, holy crap, I need to find this movie. I haven't checked if it's streaming anywhere or whatever, but I do physically want to own a copy of this. But I enjoyed the book as well, but I just read the book, The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. Really, really good. It's very sweet. And the movie itself is from 1978. I think the 70s. Like, if you look at the cast, which as a kid, of course, I wouldn't have known, but it had like Angela Lansbury, Mia Farrow, Jeff Bridges, Alan Arkin, a great little cast. But if you've never seen the movie, check out the movie. If you're curious about the book, read the book. It really fancy that. But yeah, let's see other movies. I had mentioned it before because I didn't want to support it because of their use of AI, but I finally did break down and watch Late Night with the Devil. And I hated it. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And it's not just because of their use of AI. I actually love the actor, and I would love the lead, David. I don't want to butcher his last name, but David. David is phenomenal, and he needs to be in more stuff. But I didn't care for this movie, and I didn't understand the hype around it. But it is really just about personal preference. If you loved it, fantastic. It just didn't vibe for me. Yeah, like I did rewatch a lot of stuff, like Stardust. Stardust needs more hype than I think it gets. I feel like Stardust should be on the same level with Princess Bride. It's got like a young Charlie Cox, a young Henry Cavill, for fuck's sake, Robert De Niro, Michelle Pfeiffer, Claire Danes, huge amount of people. It is great. So watch it. It's phenomenal. Near Dark, rewatch that, the 1987 flick. Bill Paxton is awesome as a vampire baddie. Lance Henriksen. There's so many people, but a lot of people that I'm like, if I see you in something, I'll be like, oh fuck, I know you from Heroes, but I don't remember your fucking name. God damn it. Saw Drive for the first time. The 2017 Ryan Gosling movie. Holy crap, that was really, really good, but I don't know if I would watch it again. It's one of those movies. There are many movies, and I mentioned, I think, Arrival last time. It's like, it was a good movie. Don't need to watch it again. Great acting, blah, blah, blah. Very subdued, but also very intense. Like some of the gore in that. Holy fuck. Rewatched My Cousin Vinny. And it was Steven's first watch of it, where he was trying to stay busy. I'm like, hey, you're missing it. Marissa Tomei won a fucking Oscar. Have some fucking respect. Yeah, but the big one. Oh, let me take some water because I hear myself being all. The big one was the 30th anniversary of The Crow, which I might have mentioned previously. The Crow coming out this year. The Bill Skarsgård one. It's like, I'll wait for it to get on something that I can rent easily that won't cost me an arm and a leg. But I was like, hey, I was too young to see that movie in theaters growing up, which is so funny because I watched so many horror movies, but it wasn't until it was available on video that I think I watched it with my grandma and my mom. Seriously. But, yeah, a lot of my family had a really weird fascination with Bruce Lee and anything tied to Bruce Lee. And obviously Brandon Lee's tied to Bruce Lee, obviously. But, we hadn't been to the movies in a while, and I kind of had it in my head that it wouldn't be that busy, but it was pretty busy. And I honestly think a lot of movies right now aren't very busy in the theaters because there just aren't a lot of movies that are really thrilling me right now that it's like, oh, fuck, I have to see that. You know what I mean? Even Poor Things, which we saw in December, it's like I was shocked at how busy it was when we saw it. And now it's like, I probably could have waited till that was on something to see it. I didn't need to see, Emma Stone fucking every guy in her path for da-da-da-da-da. It's about a lot more than that, obviously, but sex scenes in theaters are always weird to me. It was funny to watch at one point, Emma Stone's character kind of saying something, she's smoking and she's just had sex with a priest, and there are two girls 3 rows down are like, oh my god, she fucked the priest, and you hear oh my god. And me, Steven, and the guy to the left of Steven are cackling, looking at each other like we all know each other. Don't know this fucking guy, but we were laughing at this chick's reaction. I'm like, that's going to the movies. Cut to us in The Crow, same movie theater, which I really like. It's a Cinemark in Grapevine that I really like, off of 121, I think. But it's my favorite movie theater. And honestly, it's my favorite place. This might be weird. It's my favorite place to get a burger They make a really good cheeseburger, and they're always nice to me. It's the little things. Did I pay too much for that cheeseburger? Probably. But it's good, and they make their fries really well, too. So I was like, let's do a little dinner date. Fuck it. And I've never seen it in theaters. He'd never seen it in theaters. He does recall seeing the second one in theaters. But it was like, I don't know why I thought because it was a re-release and just celebrating the 30th anniversary. I don't know why I thought that there wouldn't be ads. And there were like 20 minutes of ads, which honestly shouldn't have surprised me. But then after 20 minutes of ads, they're finally like, okay, here you go. They started with special features from the release that they were hyping up for the 30th anniversary. Like, don't show me special features. Just start the fucking movie, please. Please. I don't know about you guys, but it's a Thursday, for fuck's sake. Some of us have to pretend to work tomorrow. And there was someone that, like, there was a seat between me and Steven and a couple that sat to the right of me. There was a seat between us, but I saw the girl like clutching her purse. So I was like, hey girl, like, if you're fine with it, I'm just going to put my purse here. Do you want to put your purse there too? And we were both like, hey, vibing, like, hey. And I don't know what about that hey vibing told her and her dude to talk throughout the whole fucking thing. Like, when I'm upset, I kind of like angry whisper to Steven. Like, but this dude was openly talking the whole time, and you could see other people getting upset, but I always feel weird about narking at somebody talking in the movies. I just don't understand the purpose of talking during the movie. Just shut up. Shut up. I've seen people lingerie shop during the movies. I've seen someone bring out their laptop. I've seen people fuck in the movies. That is when I brought something like, hey, I don't care if you're the hottest people in the entire world and everything is 100% consensual. I came here to see Finding Nemo, not finding something, not finding, I'm trying to think of something hilarious and I just can't because I don't know why I picked the movie Finding Nemo to reference. Oh yeah. We're all just going to go to Finding Nemo later, if you know what I mean. Wink. But, no, instead, I just decided to, like, bitch and moan about it the entire time. And it was during quiet parts. And I heard, because they weren't talking quietly, that this was their first time seeing the movie. And it was very much like, oh, what, this, or blah, 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 or what's happening here? Why did he say it that way? And I wanted to be like, dude, whether or not you've seen it, just watch it. Watch the movie. Like, cause I had mentioned this during, I had mentioned this before that one of the reasons I started Obscure Chatter is kind of thinking back to a time where I'm like, hey, I really love this movie. I want to share it with you since you've never seen it, to the person I was in a serious relationship with before, Steven, and how he like shit on the movie the entire time and how it might sound stupid, but it hurt my feelings. It was kind of bringing me back to that place where it's like, okay, so you haven't seen it and you're shitting all over it. Just leave. Like, why are you here? But aside from that, we were still able, like, eventually, like, because it was so consistent, eventually you're able to kind of start tuning it out. You know what I mean? It's like living in the city after a while versus when a friend is visiting you. They're like, how do you deal with that? And you hear, like 5 fire trucks and, people just, it's like being, like being in the French Quarter on Mardi Gras where you just kind of tune it all out. And I guess we did, but, talking to Steven afterward, I'm like, I don't know if I've ever noticed this, like on these scars on like T-Bird's face before, or I didn't notice this. And it's interesting. I'm like, oh, and we were talking about, cause Brandon Lee passed away, in the middle of this film. Just kind of talking about, because we're film people too, and we've worked on a few films. Like I've done like ADR and acting and all that stuff too. And Steven's worked, on the sounds part of it too. But we were like, I can't remember. We were trying to like piece together like what films were, or what parts of the film were done with a double or done later with the consent of the family, like CGI or just computer magic. Versus, because I remember distinctly through one of the behind the scenes little documentary things that for a second there they were playing with like a Brandon Lee mask, like that everybody universally was like, this is not okay. We cannot. We can't do this. And I think they destroyed the mask pretty quickly. But it's just kind of crazy. Like, and we were like looking it up afterward, being like, oh, okay, so we were right about this scene. We were right about this scene. Beautiful film. Are there problems with the overall story? Yeah, like I don't really like a woman being in pain for the purpose of plot. I don't like death for the purpose of plot, or for the purpose of character development for somebody else at the expense, most often, of a female character. It's just a hard, or nearly impossible sell for me. But it's something, I think, because I loved the movie a lot as a kid, and I used to have a big crush on Brandon Lee. There was an action movie that he did before where I was already obsessed, and I knew that he was Bruce Lee's son. Like that, I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to see him in more things. And there was this, and then we got nothing else because of a tragic incident. But there was this one quote that I wanted to share with you guys if you hadn't heard it, and it's from press that was done during the shooting of the entire film. Like, how sometimes throughout the shooting of the film, my apologies, where, they do little snippets and interviews as the show goes on. But there is one that you may or may not have seen from Brandon, but it spoke to me just because I've been very reflective lately about, hey, 5 years of Obscure Chatter, or 14 years since that anime show, or I've been acting for 26 years. I've been together with my dude. I've been married with my dude for 15 years. And all this, just life is fun. I just turned 40. So I get, there's all this like, hey, life. But here it is. And it's from one of the interviews. I think this might have been right before he passed. But don't quote me on that. But because we do not know when we will die, we get to think of life as an inexhaustible well. And yet everything happens only a certain number of times, and a very small number, really. How many more times will you remember a certain afternoon of your childhood? An afternoon that is so deeply a part of your being that you cannot conceive of your life without it. Perhaps 4 or 5 times more. Perhaps not even that. How many more times will you watch the full moon rise? Perhaps 20. And yet, it all seems limitless. Isn't that beautiful? But yeah, if you've never seen The Crow, give it a watch. Time is a thing, so remember it's a 30-year-old film. Yeah, it's a beautiful film. I'm glad I finally got to see it in theaters, despite, someone deciding that they needed to talk about their entire fucking life and razz the film that they paid to see. It's so weird to me. Let's see. And the only other movie that we checked out, it was stupid, like talking about such a special movie to us to go to, like, Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse. I don't remember. I think I saw like a clip of it somewhere, and I'm like, I want to see this stupid movie. And it was so wonderfully stupid. You can't take anything that happens in it seriously, but we laughed a lot. So it's the little things. And as far as TV shows, I tried with Orphan Black Echoes. It's new. I couldn't get into it. I don't know. I think they relied too much on something, but I had to stop. I couldn't get into it, which sucked. Watched the season finale of Shooty's first season of Doctor Who. It was not my favorite season finale, but it's still so good. I can't wait to see what else he does. I love him as the Doctor. He's really, really good. Saw the season finale, the series finale of Good Doctor, which some people love, other people do not. Watched WeCrashed on Apple TV. That was a lot, and it's about real people. Check it out. WeCrashed on Apple TV Plus with Jared Leto, who's and Anne Hathaway, who we love. Who we absolutely love. Rewatched Mad Men. And I'm trying Twilight Zone right now. The new Twilight Zone that I think came out in 2022. It is hit or miss, but that tracks for the Twilight Zone. There are some episodes of old Twilight Zone where, dear God, why? And run into a couple of, this isn't even spooky. It's just, but the new season of The Boys, I got to tell you, as of this recording, we just finished season 4, episode 5. Wrecked us. It completely fucked up our night. It hit very close to home, and it's just so crazy. It's especially crazy when it's one of those zany shows or zany entities, like a super camp or whatever, where you're like, why is this so fucking weird? But then it does something so incredibly touching. And you're like, wait, how is this in the same show as this? That's life. But it hit us really hard. But I'm enjoying it. Some people really hate it. I guess I understand it. Just don't watch it. Simple. The Bear. I'm starting The Bear season 3, which The Bear is so good. So good. And again, very much like it can have like a haha moment and then be like, Jesus Christ. Who else needs therapy after this episode? And then, I am very grateful for Crunchyroll Premium Access, because I am watching Robotech for the first time. My dude loves Robotech, and I've never watched more than a couple of episodes. And I'm watching it now on Crunchyroll with Steven in our downtime, and it's a lot of fun because he kind of compared it. He's like, Robotech to me is like Buffy for you. Like Buffy was a big part of my childhood, and like I wanted to dress like Buffy. I wanted to paint my nails like Buffy. I wanted like that kind of blonde hair as Buffy because Sarah Michelle Gellar and I are both that dark brunette. Just loved it. Obsessed with like Angel and vampires, blah. But Robotech was it for him, and so he and I have been watching that, and he's been very patient with me. I'm like, why is Mint-May in here so much? Or something like, God, or does no one care that these two characters are cousins? Like, not like Sailor Moon, like, edit cousins. Like, these people are actually related. Why is everyone okay with this? But, like, give me more aliens, damn it. But the big one, and I think the one I'm most vocal about on social media, is Interview with a Vampire. I have the last episode of season 2 happening tomorrow, as of this recording, tomorrow. And it's gotten Steven excited about reading the Vampire Chronicles, all that. But I'm very much obsessed with it. And I think everybody needs to check it out. Yes, vampires, but also the way they do, they talk about the unreliability of memory and how this is not necessarily truth. This is the truth for that character, or this is the truth because this character does not have all the information. It's very interesting storytelling. And also, Jacob Anderson's beautiful. Sam Reed is beautiful. Ben Daniels as Santiago is not something I'm comfortable admitting to, but holy crap, he can get it. He can get it. But yeah, so, which is horrible because Santiago's a horrible human being, or vampire, excuse me. But yeah, so it's been a whole mess of stuff. We mentioned as far as comfort foods for the month of June, cruffin. I tried a cruffin, which I wish Steven had been with me, but I was hanging out with my friend Arissa at a coffee shop and they had a cruffin. And I was like, what the fuck is a cruffin? It's not a croissant. It's not a muffin. It's a cruffin. And yeah, I bit into it. And apparently there was a woman sitting next to me that she wanted to try it too. She's like, how is it? And Arissa waited too. And I'm like, this is just a gentrified churro. And they laughed about it, but I'm like, I mean, I still ate it all. But to me, I'm like, this is just a churro. I'm such a slut for anything with sugar and cinnamon. So yeah, it was good. And I'd get it again. Do I think the cruffin was worth $5+ No. But yeah. So somebody says, happy anniversary, Obscure Chatter. Thank you for making the ends of my month super relaxing. And I say, you're welcome. You're very, very welcome. And another topic request was talking about corporations trying to get you to phase out physical media and the advantages of physical media. And I guess I touched on that briefly, but yeah, running into a lot of things where even the last time I was at Horror Freak, which was yesterday, Eric, the owner, has started a little section that's like out of print or rare physical media. And I have a feeling that that section might get a little bigger or smaller because people will probably snatch up stuff. But it's hard. Like there was a friend of mine in from New York that wanted to kind of get into it, into watching anime. And she asked for some suggestions. There's just so much anime. So I'm like, it's just hard. So what I do when people want to get into anime, I'm like, what are like, kind of how I initially did Obscure Chatter. Like, what are your top 5 favorite shows? And kind of like cater that to the little bit of anime that I've watched. Because I think I've watched a lot of anime, but I mean, in the grand scope, probably not that much. And I was like, you might be able to get a subscription or whatever. It's like, well, I don't want to get a subscription if like I'm getting into it. So just give me some titles. Like, you don't understand physical media, especially like anime that's considered an import. You might be paying a little more, blah, blah, blah. But she wanted to see something that I'd done. And I ended up sending her a copy of an extra copy that I had lying around because she's like, oh, I was thinking about Parasite. I'm like, I checked it out and I couldn't find the Parasite that has the dub track that I did. I don't know anything about the legality or anything about that, but I just couldn't find it. And I don't think it's available anymore. But yeah, I don't know. Don't know at all. But, that's going to happen more and more to things that not only we love, or that we're a part of, but also just things that we love to watch. So yeah, I can't say as to why that's what's kind of driving me crazy about everything is everything's got to turn into a subscription. I'm like, I just like doing that with Pro Tools, not only did I have to switch to a subscription thing instead of being like, no, I own this version of Pro Tools. I had to subscribe for less access and less tracks and everything when I used to just be able to, hey, here's a large sum of money and now I can do whatever the fuck I want. I don't know what's so wrong about just physically having something. Like I have to subscribe to keep Word updated. It's fucking dumb. I don't get it. So for everything to kind of be leaning that way, it annoys the crap out of me. It really does. But yeah, So that's all I'll say on that. But somebody also asked, am I not doing conventions anymore? It's not that I'm not doing conventions anymore. It's I can't justify conventions right now. And the last big con I did was right before, the last bigger con that I did was where I had a medical emergency. And we've talked about this before, but if it hadn't been for the attendees, staff, and honestly, just everybody, mostly MVP is my partner in crime, Stephen. But if it hadn't been for the ability to dissociate from the horrors that I was going through and be the busiest I could have been at that time while still dealing with major fallout from what was going on with me, I don't know if I would have been okay for a very, very long time. And that's not to say that I was okay, but I was able, in the midst of coming to terms with all the shit that was happening to me and plans that I had, I don't know what I would have done if this had happened to me somewhere other than a con. The con, and the staff, because, it was a medical emergency. I had a member of staff sleeping out in the lobby, just waiting for any kind of information and making sure, that one of their guests didn't die. And then, 8, 9 hours later, I forget the exact time, they took me to get a few things from Walmart and then went back to my hotel room. And then in a couple of hours after having a major breakdown and everything, I cleaned myself up. And then I did my schedule of stuff, that day, that Saturday, and then that, Sunday. And staff occasionally were like, "Hey, how you doing?" Check in with me. It's phenomenal. But, there's photos of me with fans, and fans have tagged me, and I'm like, man, I'm going through something past that smile or da-da-da-da-da. But it's not to say that going to a con now would trigger that feeling of kind of helplessness and everything. But I'm saying there was something weird about going through something so big without your normal go-to support system. And I'm like, man, what if Steven hadn't been there with me? Or, da-da-da-da-da. So many different things could have worked out very, very differently. Or, what if things had been worse? I didn't want to, be at a hospital that very much did not take care of me. They honestly, it's man, if I turned septic or anything like that, these people very much would have just let me die in a room unattended, because I was there for hours, but altogether my interactions with people was less than, I want to say 30 minutes out of all of that. It's pretty horrendous, but that has nothing to do with the con. Since then, I have found it harder to turn on Convention Terri. Convention Terri is still me, but remember that cons are still work. So doing this, I have hey, you have to have an online store, and you also have to bring all these cards and make sure that your Square information is up to date, blah, 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 blah. And then on top of that, you're doing panels and all this stuff. I think it takes a specific amount of patience, and I'm not there where I was before that to deal with that. I'll say that con could have been yo, how are you going to make up for, they could have, it would have been a really shitty move, sure, but they didn't do this. Hey, you need to make up for the panel you lost and blah, blah, blah. And I kind of got into it with a couple of fellow guests were like, hey, where were you? You were supposed to do this con or supposed to do this panel with me and you just bounced. Like, I heard you were at the hospital. Like, yeah, I was. Like, what happened? Like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm like, well, it just sucks because people were asking where you were. I'm really, real fucking sorry that it inconvenienced you. You know, that kind of thing where it's like, you don't, well, like, here's where it's like, we're coworkers, we're not friends. Don't fucking talk to me like that. Giving you so much information right now, I know. But all of that's just to say, like, I've been asked since doing this. It was in 2019, so this is before COVID became a heavy thing to still consider to this day, which some people don't. I can't risk. I don't want to put myself in unnecessary risk, and I don't want to risk my fans unnecessarily. It's just a vibe that and a headspace that I'm not prepared to put myself in again. I've done like a library con, which I love talking to kids and I love interacting one-on-one, and I've done some virtual stuff. Those don't bother me at all, but just the idea, like the couple of times where I was trying to do one in New York and that just kind of fell through. No, two in New York, and both of those just kind of like fell through. It's just I didn't vibe. Or the idea of like putting it all together and planning it all out. It just didn't, you know, I'm going to be honest with y'all. I had a lot more like, oh, we're going to talk about this and blah, 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 blah. But I never really fully plan out what we're going to talk about throughout the show. And I definitely wanted to talk about a little bit about looking back at that anime show and then looking back at about Obscure Chatter. And then on top of all of that, it's being like, hey, what have you been watching? So yeah, the time definitely flew by in a weird way. Maybe it's because I'm sitting down. Usually or when I'm in the booth, I try to stand up, and it makes me think of like my old stand-up comedy days where I'm like performing for the microphone, where here I really am just talking to you guys, sitting stationary, which I probably need to get up soon and do yoga or something, do something more effective. But 5 years in, I want to say that the feedback and interactions that I have with you guys because of the stuff that we talk about within the show means so much to me and to Steven. I know Steven isn't hosting this or whatever, but this is also his project as well. And we've talked about this before, where it's kind of like a diary. It's kind of like therapy, whatever it is. It's all been too much and not enough in these 5 years, where sometimes when I look at like, this is episode 49, I'm like, how is it only episode 49? And then another time I'm like, we've done 49 of these. Are you kidding me? And then, yeah, like looking back on that anime show, I'm like, my God, what am I going to do when I listen back to like Obscure Chatter in 10 years? Like, what's that going to be? Like, oh, Terri, why? Why'd you say that? 15 years later, being like 55 and being like, oh my God, I knew nothing at 40. It might be the same way that I'm like, oh God, 25-year-old Terri doesn't know shit. Time's fun that way. But I think this might be a good place to end it. I'll keep it light, and then we'll get back to like more in-depth topics on all of that. It is a very reflective type of vibe to me that I'm happy with, and I hope you are too. Remember that TAS Rewind starts this Thursday, which you would think I'd have the date in front of me, and I don't. And so that means old That Anime Show episodes featuring myself, J. Michael Tatum, and Stephen Hoff, and more episodes than I'll probably ever be in Obscure Chatter, as well as a multitude of guests of people that we've worked with over the years, including Alexis Tipton, Jesse James Greeley, Tia Ballard, Joel McDonald, trying to think of other people, Anastasia Munoz. So many, and of course, the One Piece podcast guys, who are no longer known as the unofficial One Piece podcast guys. They're the One Piece podcast guys. They are fucking phenomenal, and that anime show would not have continued on the way it did without them. And Obscure Chatter would not have continued without the support of people like you listener, and you, Stephen, also listening. I thank you so much. I don't know what the future has in store, but for the time being, we're going to keep doing these monthly. If you have any topic requests or questions, which I know we didn't really cover that much because I clearly had a strong idea of what I wanted to cover for our 5th anniversary episode. We always have a Google form handy that I'll share through Obscure Chatter's Twitter, as well as my personal Twitter and Instagram, whole mess of stuff that is open at the beginning of the month and closes, after we stop taking submissions so I can solidify what I want to talk about. But yeah, until next we meet, where it might be even hotter. Thank you so much for making this show what it is and allowing me to grow along with you. Until next time, read good shit, watch good shit, and consider not being a shit. Don't talk during the crow. Come on. Later.